Welcome to Brier's Music Showcase. I'm Bryer and welcome to another video. And I think it's about time I do another mini-series. So this was kind of inspired by really two channels. The number one inspiration was Garrett from SoundLab Studios, of course, good friend of mine. I've talked about him before many times. And he's doing a little weekly series on his channel, like every Saturday. He does a live stream with Nick, another good friend I've gotten to know because of him. And every Saturday, every morning on the Saturday, they usually do a live stream and they talk about one specific year in music, and they just talk about their top 3 favorite albums in that year. And of course there's honorable mentions, of course, and they're kind of going chronologically. They started with 1965, I believe, and they're just going to go for as long as they feel. I think they're going to stop, I think, 83 possibly. But so that kind of got me inspired to talk about some of my favorite albums in this specific year. And the second channel was Larry Gray's A Canadian Stud Muffin. He's kind of doing something similar. He's kind of going through specific years and talking about his favorite albums in that year. Of course, it was kind of ironic because the exact day I'm recording this video, he uploaded a video talking about the exact year I'm going to be talking about now. I did not plan that, and hopefully he doesn't sue me. But anyhow, so in this series, I'm going to be going through just the 80s. So I'm going to start with 1980, and I'm going to go all the way to 1989. And the reason why I've decided to start with the 80s is kind of because, if you recall, like last year, I made videos just talking about my favorite albums of a specific decade. So I started with the 80s first, and then I went back and did the 70s, and then the most recent one I did the 60s. And so I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to talk about the 80s first, and then maybe sometime down the line we'll tackle the 70s, and then we'll talk about the 60s, and we'll see if I continue, if I do 90s or 2000s onwards. We'll see how that goes. But in this video, as you saw in the title already, as I probably implied, I'm going to start with 1980. So this was the beginning of the 80s. Of course, it was kind of, well, you know, whenever you're transitioning into a new decade, there's always going to be some leftovers from the 70s. So kind of a nice little transitional period in terms of music, but I still think there was still a ton of good stuff. So before I talk about my top 5, couple of I guess you could say these are just like disclaimers. For one, if there's an album that you feel that I didn't mention, that you love that I did not mention, please note that there's probably 2 reasons because of it. 1, I didn't hear it, I haven't heard it yet, and 2, and this is probably the most likely reason, I don't own it. So I'm only going to be talking about albums that I have in my collection behind me. Okay, so just so you know, again, if I don't mention an album that you love, it's either because I haven't heard it, or I don't have it, or the third option is because it just didn't hit the top 5. Okay, so I don't think I have anything else besides that. No, I think that's it. So here we go. So again, this is my opinion. I'm not saying these are the best albums of the 80s. I'm just saying these are my 5 favorite. Okay, and of course in the comments you can let me know your top 5 in the comments, of course. Okay, so here we go. Now let's start. Starting with number 5, I'm going to start with an album that I feel not a whole lot of people know. Some people may know the band, but not this particular album. To me, I think it's a very underrated one in their catalog. So the band is Blue Oyster Cult, and this is their 1980 release, Cultosaurus erectus. And you're probably wondering what the heck is on the cover there. From what I gathered, this is based on some artwork. So it even has it on the back here. So you kind of see, it's supposed to be like this dinosaur creature. Okay, and even on the back, they even give you some exposition a little bit on the inside here. So I'm not sure if this is all true. I'm pretty sure that most of it was made up, but I'm sure it's based on real stuff, some real science. So yeah, let me just show you the inside. Might as well show you what's included in the CD. Why not? We have all the time we have. The thing is, this is very difficult to take out. There we go. That was actually a lot easier than usual. So the booklet, I mean, if you can call it a booklet, there's really not a whole lot to say. This is all you get. I mean, you have the classic lineup. You have Eric Bloom, keyboard, guitar, and vocals. Albert Bouchard on drums and vocals, Joe Bouchard on bass and vocals, then Alan Lanier on guitar and keyboards, and then you have Buck Dharma, guitars, bass, keyboards, and vocals. And on a special guest, you have saxophone by Mark Rivera, and produced by Martin Birch. Of course, Martin Birch, very well known producers, worked with many metal bands like Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, of course. I think he worked with Rainbow, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is 1980, so this is, to many people, this was kind of a return to form, because the album they released previously was the album Mirrors, and that was kind of them going in a more commercial sound, which many fans were kind of put off by it. Now, I happen to enjoy Mirrors, but I could definitely say that this is definitely a much more hard-rocking album than Mirrors. So again, there's some great songs in here. There's only 9 songs, but there's so many really underrated tracks here. It starts with Black Blade, which is a great opening track. Then it goes to Monsters, which has the saxophone that I mentioned, which is kind of different because, of course, I definitely I'm not complaining about it, because, you know, I love my horns, so especially the saxophone. So that was a nice little welcome. Divine Wind and Deadline are both great little catchier numbers here, but still gives you the more hard rocking little bit of metal. I don't really consider Blue Oyster Cult metal per se, but, you know, I mean, it's definitely a lot more heavier, if we can call it that. Marshall Plan's great. Hungry Boys is okay, probably my least favorite song on the album, but still not too bad. And then you have my favorite song, which is called Fallen Angel, and I believe that's Joe Bouchard on vocals, if I'm not mistaken, and he does a really good job on the vocals here. So to kind of describe Joe Bouchard's vocals, it's kind of a combination between Roger Daltrey from The Who, but also Roger Taylor from the Queen. So you blend them together, and that's kind of what you get. And I love that. I think it's a really great underrated song. So Fallen Angel, go ahead and check that one out if you haven't heard that one. Then you have Lips in the Hills and Unknown Tongue, which are also really good tracks. So yeah, I recommend it if you're at least a little bit familiar with Blue Oyster Cult. I think it's a good one to check out. Again, I think this is one that not many people seem to talk about that much, but I think this is a very underrated one in the catalog. So there you have it. So that's my number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have another well-known band, and this one was a big deal because this was the first one with their brand new lead singer. They had fired the previous one, and they're starting the decade with a brand new one. And this vocalist would become one of the most well-respected metal vocalists of all time. The band is Black Sabbath, and the vocalist is Ronnie James Dio, and this is the album Heaven and Hell. Great, really great heavy metal album. Again, by this point, the band was really taking the heavy metal sound that they started and really started to really expand upon, I think. A lot more heavier. The guitars are very much in your face. Really great riffs by Tony Iommi, of course, and of course Ronnie James Dio. I mean, what has not been said about his vocals? Just really great, and I think it matches the sound really good. I know there are some people who are Ozzy only and nothing else. Like, everything with Ozzy is untouchable. Nothing's better than that. But, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that, but I think this is still very good. Awesome stuff here. So this is actually a 2021 remaster of it. So this is a 2 CD pack. So here's the back, by the way, if you're curious. So obviously this one had Ronnie, of course. There's Geezer Butler on bass, Tony Iommi on guitar, and of course Bill Ward on drums. Okay, so disc 1 is the original album, and then disc 2 is a lot of the bonus tracks, which is usually just a lot of live stuff, and also some live B-sides, live 7-inch edits, mono 7-inch edits, you know, all that stuff. So let's go ahead. This is just what the inside looks like. Okay, you can see the disc here. Let me just flip it over, just so they look a little bit better. Again, produced by Martin Birch. Second time he's appeared in this list. I wonder if that'll be a theme. We'll see. But yeah, I'm not going to go too in depth in the booklet, but you know, just gives you like little information, some photos, stuff like that, a little history, all the things you need to know. All right, so onto the songs themselves. You have Neon Nights, great opening track, really a great way to showcase Ronnie in the band here. Then you have Children of the Sea, Lady Evil, which has a great little bass riff on it. And then you have the title track, which is a classic. I mean, at least a classic in terms of this period of the band. Wishing Well, Die Young, Walk Away, and it finishes out with Lonely Is the Word. Really great kind of, not really a melancholic song, but kind of a more brooding type of song, if that's the best way to describe it. But yeah, absolutely killer album. And again, even though, again, I tend to lean more to the Ozzy side, but Ronnie James Dio definitely he definitely stands out. It's kind of cool that they got a singer that sounds nothing like Ozzy and decided to bring in somebody who will bring something brand new to the band, and I think it worked out really well in the favor. So yeah, that's my number 4, Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. At number 3, this might be a shock to some of you if you've been watching this channel for a bit. I've talked about this person a lot, and I've said that she is one of, if not my favorite female vocalist of all time, and that is Kate Bush, and this is her 1980 release, Never Forever. Really cool cover, by the way. Not sure what's going on, but it's kind of interesting. And of course, that kind of matches her in a nutshell. Always interesting, kind of unusual, but very intriguing. And here's the back here. You open it up, nice little design here, and here's the disc, Fish People. It's kind of funny. And it has the booklet, of course. Again, won't go too in depth, but yeah, it just has the lyrics to it. No, nothing else to really showcase in it. So yeah, this was kind of a transitional album, shall we say, for her, because she released 2 albums before this, and you know, I mean, the debut is great, spectacular, great way to start career. Second one, maybe not so much, kind of the debut part 2, but this one was kind of a really step in the right direction, real step forward, because at this point she's starting to step into the producing seat. Now she doesn't produce she's not the only one producing. I think she's producing with somebody else. I can't remember who it was. I'm gonna see if the booklet tells you who helped produce. John Kelly. So it was her and John Kelly. Of course, Kate's still writing the lyrics and the music, but now she's starting to step into the producing seat, and you're starting to see she's definitely starting to take her career on a very different path, starting to experiment a bit more. There's a lot of keyboards on this one, and mainly a lot of the inspiration was with the help of Peter Gabriel, because by this point those two had been kind of not really collaborating, but kind of, you know, just kind of become friends, kind of seeing what the other one was doing, and Kate was seeing what Peter was doing, and she was like, I think I want to try something similar to this. And it's you definitely hear a lot more experimentation here, like I mentioned before. And yeah, not quite at that level where that's not. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that it's not quite up to where I love my Kate Bush, because I still really enjoy this one, but it's not quite what I love about her. So, but we'll get to that later on in the decade. Sorry if that's gone on for way too long. But anyhow, let's talk about the songs. So it starts out with Babushka, which is kind of one of her classics. Great way to open the album. And then you have let's see if I say this right, Delius, which is kind of a more of a mellow song right there. Then you have Blow Away, which is a very cool song, because when I was looking up information on it, it's about I think it was a technician on her first tour, and there was an accident, and this person would fall to his death. It was a complete accident. No one was at fault about it. But Kate was kind of felt bad about it and decided to write a song about it, kind of showing how she felt on it. And I think it's a beautiful song. I like that one. Then you have All We Ever Look For, which is another great, more mellow song, but I love the keyboards in it and the sound of Kate's vocals on it. You have Egypt, and then you have The Wedding List, which I think The Wedding List is kind of the most rocking song on here, kind of the most similar to her first 2 albums. Then you have Violin, starting to really see her starting to really push her vocal range there, which I love. The Infinite Kiss, Night Scented Shock, Army Dreamers, another good standout number, and then it finishes out with Breathing. So yeah, a very strong album. Again, it's only number 3 because to me, I think she'll do way better, which you'll definitely see later on in this decade. But yeah, number 3 is Never Forever by Kate Bush. Ironically, this is her 3rd album and it's number 3 on my list. What can you do? At number 2, we have another artist that I was kind of obsessed with for a time. So 2022 was Kate Bush. 2021 was this particular band. Even though they only released 2 albums, I was listening to this band a ton. And what I have here is their 2nd and final album. This is, of course, Closer by Joy Division. And you have this really haunting image of a tomb on the cover. Very simple, it's all white. Then on the back, you just got nothing, just the band name. This is another like deluxe edition. See what's inside. Again, not a lot of imagery here, just gives you the part of the track listing, and on the other side they give you the rest of it. Even the discs are pretty plain. You have black and white, and we have, let's take the booklet out real quick. Ooh. Here, I mean, this kind of sums up the album. Of course, that's Ian Curtis, who would, I can't remember if he died. I think he died. He was dead by the time this album came out, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of gives you interviews here. Here's just a photo of the band. You have Peter Hook, Ian Curtis, Stephen Morris. And then you have Bernard Sumner. Yeah, not much else to say. All right. So they released their first album, Unknown Pleasures, which I love. But by the time they get to this album, you can see that the music is definitely taking a much more experimental, kind of more darker approach, especially in terms of the lyrics, because if you already know the history of Joy Division, by this point Ian's mental state has gone down, like it's basically rock bottom. And so a lot of the lyrics are really taking this very dark, very depressing, very melancholic tone, very gothic. And the music itself is taking on this very artsy, more gothic sound to it. And that's really because of the producer, Martin Hannett, who definitely was very big into the production. So yeah, it's definitely not, if you want to get into Joy Division, I would probably say this is not a good one to start with because of a lot of the subject matter, and again, the production might turn some people off. Maybe it's a bit too experimental for some. So I would say check out Unknown Pleasure first and then come back to this one. But it took me a few listens to really get it, or in other words, me appreciating it because of just how different it is to the first album. But once it clicked, like I was in on it. Like it was just I just really appreciate the artistic nature of it. And again, the lyrics to it, again, like I said, they're very depressing, but I've always said that Ian Curtis was a very underrated, I'm not sure if I said it on this channel though, but I've said it before privately that Ian Curtis was kind of like a very underrated lyricist and poet, I think. Like if he would have lived on, I can see him becoming like one of the much more well-regarded lyricists. But you know, he died. So luckily we have these albums like this that kind of keeps his memory alive. But yeah, there's really not much to say on it, really. But again, if you're going to listen to this album, again, be prepared because it's definitely not a happy ride, but it's still very much worth hearing. I didn't really mention the songs, but I mean, there's really not much else to say on it because they're all kind of not the same, but you know, it just has the same vibe. But each song is very different, different rhythms, a lot of the good bass tones by Peter Hook, good bass lines. Even the effects they put on Ian's vocals, which add to the what's the word? The dreariness of the album. So yeah, that's my number 2. That's Closer by Joy Division. And speaking of Closer, let's talk about my number 1. But before we talk about my top pick, let's first showcase some honorable mentions.
Breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law. Invisible airwaves crackle with life. Way back when, in 67.
So for my number one pick for 1980, there'll be some of you that'll be like, oh, duh. But then there'll be some of you that'll be like, really? Above Kate Bush? Above Black Sabbath? Above Joy Division? Well, again, it's my list. So my number one pick is this. Really, I mean, when you see the cover, you'll be like, yep, we know. Yep, we have Back in Black by AC/DC. I mean, what has not been said about it? It's one of the top-selling albums of all time, and it's certainly deservedly so because of how iconic this album is. Of course, this is the first album with Brian Johnson on lead vocals, so let's quickly showcase what's inside. I mean, I did a short on this album not that long ago, so if you look back on my shorts, you'll kind of already know what's included. Of course, you have all these band shots here. There's Angus, of course. There's the CD in black. Of course, I mean, fits the theme. Then here's the booklet. At least now I can go a little slower, so you can kind of see what's inside. You have a lot of these shots, a lot of newsletters, and a little history on the album. I like how I said I'm going to go through this slower, but it seems like I'm going pretty quick. And then, of course, you have Angus on the back. So, by this point, they had just lost their former lead singer, Bon Scott, who had died from alcohol poisoning. But they got Brian Johnson, and it's like they didn't miss a beat. I mean, he definitely, you can tell, like, just how Brian is just really belting it out. Like he's probably, like, I can only imagine he's probably like, this could either go very well or very badly for this band, but if this is the last album I'm doing, I'm gonna give it my all. And he just cranks it to 11. Like, really, in the first song, Hell's Bells, when he's just screaming the chorus, you can just feel it. So, and it's just absolutely awesome job. I know people are kind of polarized on Brian Johnson's vocals, but I personally love him. I have no issue with it myself. But yeah, then it goes to Shoot the Thrill, which is one of my favorite songs ever, one of my favorite hard rock songs ever. Just really great one. I love it a lot. Then even the more deeper cuts on here, like What Do You Do for Money, Honey, which is great. Really catchy. The same with Giving the Dog a Bone. Then you have Let Me Put My Love Into You. Really underrated song that is. Then you have the iconic title track. And like, even though it's, you can say it's been overplayed a lot. You hear it a ton, but again, it's just like, I'm not sick of it yet. Like, I hear that riff and I just can't help but just rock out to it. It's just so good. You Shook Me All Night Long. I would say of the big hits on here, it's probably my least favorite, but other than that, I have no issue with it. As long as I don't listen to it that often, I don't have an issue. Then you have Have a Drink on Me, and then you have Shake a Leg, and then it finishes off with Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. Even though that's kind of my least favorite song, it's kind of a more slower, bluesier song, but it's still a great way to close it. I think it's a good way to, it pretty much sums up the whole album, basically. But yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say, because many people have talked about this album many times. But yeah, that is my favorite album of 1980. So again, some of you might not agree, some of you might disagree, but again, this is my list. And of course, in the comments below, I wanted to hear your favorite albums from 1980. Did you agree with my picks? Did you disagree? I mean, just let me know your thoughts on it. And I'll see you again in 1981. I'm not sure exactly when the next episode is going to be. I'm probably going to spread them out. I don't know if I'll do them weekly, or I'll do them every other day, or tomorrow. Probably not tomorrow. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you'll enjoy this series, and yeah, we'll see what happens. So that's pretty much it. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, and goodbye for now.